officer. Got a report of suspicious activity. Folks say someone matching your description has been causing trouble. I'm going to need to see some ID.
Officer, I'm just having dinner with my girlfriend. I haven't done anything.
If you don't cooperate, you know how this ends. Let's not make it hard ID now.
I'm not looking for trouble. I'm a sailor in uniform enjoying a quiet night out, that's all.
Hey.
This officer made the worst mistake of his career when he decided to humiliate the wrong man in front of an entire restaurant. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you're watching this for the first time. It was a Thursday evening in downtown Seattle, the kind of night where the city lights reflected off glass towers and expensive cars lined the valet. On the 42nd floor of the Cascade Tower, Viktor Ashford sat across from his girlfriend, Simone, at Altius, one of those restaurants where reservations take weeks and the view costs as much as the food. Viktor was 35, muscular build, clean-shaved, wearing a charcoal gray suit tailored to fit perfectly. He'd just returned from deployment 2 months ago, Navy SEAL, 12 years of service, 3 tours overseas, the kind of man who moved through the world with quiet confidence, not because he needed to prove anything, but because he'd already proven everything that mattered. Simone was laughing at something he said when the elevator doors opened near their table. Officer Garrett Bowen stepped out, mid-40s, 15 years on the force, the kind of cop who wore his badge like it gave him permission to decide who belonged where. He scanned the room slowly, eyes moving over tables of well-dressed diners until they landed on Viktor. He walked straight toward them. Viktor noticed him coming but didn't react. He'd learned a long time ago that staying calm was the first rule of survival. "Excuse me," Bowen said, stopping at their table. His tone was already accusatory. "I need to see some identification." Simone looked up, confused. Viktor set down his water glass and met the officer's eyes. "Is there a problem, officer?" Viktor asked. His voice was even, controlled. "We received a report of suspicious activity in this building," Bowen said. "You matched the description. I need to see your ID, now." Viktor didn't move. "What description?" Bowen's jaw tightened. "Don't make this difficult. People like you keep matching these descriptions and we have to follow up. That's how this works." The words hung in the air. "People like you." Simone's face went pale. A couple at the next table stopped talking and glanced over. Viktor stayed calm. "Officer, I'm having dinner with my girlfriend. I haven't done anything suspicious. What exactly was reported?" "I'm not here to debate with you," Bowen said, louder now. "I gave you a lawful order. Show me your ID or I'll detain you for obstruction." Viktor leaned back slightly in his chair. He knew the law. He'd been trained in more than just combat. Under Terry v. Ohio, you need reasonable suspicion of criminal activity to demand identification. Sitting in a restaurant isn't a crime, so I'm going to need you to explain what reasonable suspicion you have. Bowen's face flushed red. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not from someone looking like Viktor. "You think you're smart?" Bowen said, his voice dropping lower, meaner. "Let me tell you something. I've been doing this job long enough to know when someone doesn't belong somewhere, and you don't belong here." Simone reached across the table. "Viktor, just show him." "No," Viktor said, quietly, still looking at Bowen. Bowen's hand moved to his belt, not his weapon, his body cam. He tapped it once, making sure it was recording. "Last chance," Bowen said. "ID now, or I'll detain you." Viktor didn't flinch. "I'm not showing you anything without probable cause. If you want to arrest me for sitting here, go ahead, but we both know this isn't about any report." The restaurant had gone quiet now. Everyone was watching. Bowen stepped closer. "You're making a big mistake." Viktor looked at him and said something that would echo in a courtroom months later. "No, officer, you are."
Bowen's hand went to his radio. "I need backup at Altius Restaurant, 42nd floor, Cascade Tower. Uncooperative suspect refusing to comply." Viktor didn't move. Simone's hands were shaking. She'd never seen anything like this. They'd been together for 8 months, and Viktor had always been the calmest person she knew. But this was different. This was wrong. "Viktor, please," she whispered. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "It's okay. Just stay calm." Bowen circled around the table, positioning himself between Viktor and the exit. "You think you can just refuse a police officer? That's not how this country works. People like you come here thinking you can do whatever you want, but there are rules, and I enforce them." Viktor's expression didn't change. "What do you mean by people like me?" "You know exactly what I mean," Bowen said. "We get calls about this building all the time, suspicious individuals, people who don't fit, and every time it's the same type causing problems." A woman at a nearby table gasped. Her husband pulled out his phone and started recording. Viktor stood up slowly, not aggressive, just standing. His 6'2" frame unfolded from the chair with the kind of controlled power that came from years of discipline. He buttoned his chute jacket. "Officer, I'm a United States citizen. I'm having dinner in a restaurant I made a reservation for 3 weeks ago. I haven't raised my voice. I haven't threatened anyone. The only person causing a problem here is you." Bowen stepped forward, closing the distance. "Sit down." "Am I under arrest?" "You will be if you don't comply." "On what charge?" Bowen's face was red now. The body cam on his chest captured everything, every word, every expression. "Disorderly conduct, obstruction, resisting, take your pick." Viktor stayed perfectly still. "I'm not resisting anything. I'm standing in a restaurant. That's not a crime. You refuse to show ID when ordered. I don't have reasonable suspicion. That makes your order unlawful, and I don't have to comply with unlawful orders." The elevator doors opened. 2 more officers stepped out, younger. They looked confused when they saw the scene. A man in an expensive suit standing calmly next to his girlfriend. No raised voices, no visible threat. "What's the situation?" one of them asked. "Suspect refused to provide identification. Disorderly conduct. I'm taking him in." The younger officer looked at Viktor, then back at Bowen. "Sir, has he been violent?" "He's refusing lawful orders." Viktor spoke directly to the new officers. "I asked what crime I'm suspected of committing. He couldn't provide an answer. I'm not required to show ID without reasonable suspicion. That's established law." One of the younger officers shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't what he'd expected when he got the call. Bowen grabbed Viktor's arm. "Turn around, hands behind your back." Simone stood up. "He didn't do anything." "Ma'am, sit down or you'll be arrested too," Bowen snapped. Viktor looked at her. "Simone, sit. Don't say anything else." She sat, tears streaming down her face. Viktor turned to Bowen. "You're making a mistake, but if you're going to arrest me, do it properly. Don't drag me, don't use force. I'm not resisting." Bowen pulled out handcuffs. "Turn around." Viktor turned slowly, placing his hands behind his back. The metal cuffs clicked around his wrists, too tight, deliberately. "You people always think you're above the law," Bowen muttered, loud enough for the body cam to catch. "Coming into places like this, acting like you own them. Well, you don't. This is my city, and people like you need to learn where you belong. Maybe you should go back to whatever country you came from." Viktor's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. The entire restaurant was silent. 30 people watching a decorated Navy SEAL being handcuffed for having dinner. Bowen pushed Viktor towards the elevator. "Let's go." As they walked past the tables, Viktor kept his head up, dignified, calm. He'd been in worse situations than this, but Garrett Bowen had no idea what he'd just done. The elevator descended in silence. Viktor stood with his hands cuffed behind his back, Bowen beside him, the 2 younger officers behind them looking increasingly uncomfortable. "You know what your problem is?" Bowen said, staring at the floor numbers. "You think wearing a nice suit changes who you are, but I've been doing this long enough. I can spot trouble from a mile away." Viktor said nothing. His training had taught him when to speak and when to let silence do the work. The elevator stopped on the 37th floor. The doors opened. A couple in evening wear stepped back when they saw the handcuffs. "Sorry, folks," Bowen said with a smile. "Just doing our job, keeping the city safe."
The doors closed again. One of the younger officers spoke up. "Sergeant Bowen, maybe we should—" "Should what, Hayes?" Bowen cut him off. "Let him go? He refused a lawful order. That's obstruction." "I'm just saying, sir, he didn't seem—" "I don't care what he seemed like. I know what I saw." The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened onto polished marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. People in the lobby turned to look, a man in handcuffs being escorted out by 3 officers. Viktor walked with his shoulders back. Even in cuffs, even being paraded through a crowd, he carried himself with quiet strength. They exited through the main doors. The night air was cool. A patrol car waited at the curb, lights flashing. Bowen opened the back door. "Watch your head." He pushed Viktor down into the seat, not gently, the kind of push that was just barely not assault. Viktor sat quietly in the back of the patrol car. Through the window, he could see people on the sidewalk watching, some recording on their phones. Bowen climbed into the driver's seat. Hayes got in the passenger side. The 3rd officer walked to his own vehicle. "You're going to be processed downtown," Bowen said, adjusting his rearview mirror to look at Viktor. "Fingerprints, mugshot, the whole deal. And then maybe you'll think twice before you talk back to a police officer." Viktor met his eyes in the mirror. "You should check who I am before you go any further with this." Bowen laughed. "Oh, I know exactly who you are. Another guy who thinks he's special, thinks the rules don't apply to him." Hayes shifted uncomfortably in the passenger seat. Something about this felt wrong to him. The suspect was too calm, too composed. People who were guilty usually got nervous. This man seemed like he was waiting for something. The drive to the precinct took 12 minutes. Viktor counted every one of them. He'd learned patience in places most people couldn't imagine. A wrongful arrest, that was nothing compared to what he'd survived. They pulled into the station parking lot. Bowen got out and opened Viktor's door. "Let's go." Inside the station, the fluorescent lights were harsh. Officers moved through hallways with paperwork and coffee cups. A few glanced at Viktor, taking in the expensive suit, the military posture, the complete lack of fear in his eyes. Bowen led him to a processing desk. A sergeant looked up from her computer. "What you got, Bowen?" "Disorderly conduct, obstruction, refusal to provide ID during a lawful stop." The sergeant looked at Viktor. "Name?" "Viktor Ashford." She typed it into the system. "Address?" Viktor provided it. "Occupation?" Viktor paused. This was the moment. "United States Navy." The sergeant's fingers stopped on the keyboard. She looked up. "Active duty?" "Yes, ma'am." Bowen stepped forward. "Doesn't matter what he claims to be, he refused." "Let me finish processing him." Her tone sharper now. She typed more, waited. Her screen refreshed. Her expression changed. She looked at Viktor, then at Bowen, then back at her screen. "Sergeant Bowen, can I speak to you privately? I'm in the middle of—" "Now." Something in her voice made him stop. They walked 10 feet away. Viktor couldn't hear the conversation, but he watched Bowen's face go from annoyed to confused to pale. The sergeant was pointing at her screen, saying something in a low, urgent voice. Bowen's eyes widened. He walked slowly back, looked at Viktor like he was seeing him for the first time. "Take the cuffs off," the sergeant said quietly. "But take them off now." Bowen's hands shook slightly as he removed the handcuffs. Viktor rubbed his wrists where the metal had cut into his skin. The sergeant stood up. "Mr. Ashford, I apologize for this situation. If you'll follow me, please." She led him to a private office, closed the door. "I just pulled up your file. Navy SEAL, 12 years of service, 3 Bronze Stars, 2 Purple Hearts. You were on deployment in Yemen 8 weeks ago." Viktor nodded. "Did you feel you were unsafe at any time?" "Yes, man." "Did you tell Sergeant Bowen this?" "Yes, man." "Did he respond to you?" "He told me to be quiet." The sergeant closed her eyes. "I'm sorry. This should never have happened."
Viktor stood. "What happens now?" She looked at him. "That depends on whether you want to file a complaint." Viktor thought about Simone, crying at the table, thought about every person in that restaurant watching him get handcuffed for being black in a nice suit. He wanted the body cam footage preserved. All of it. The sergeant nodded. "It will be."
The body cam footage was reviewed the next morning. Captain Linda Morales sat in her office and watched the entire encounter 3 times. Each viewing made her angrier than the last. She called Bowen into her office at 0900 hours. He walked in like nothing had happened, like he just had another routine shift. "Sit down," Morales said. He sat. She turned her monitor toward him and pressed play. "We received a report of suspicious activity in this building. You match the description. People like you keep matching these descriptions. You don't belong here. People like you come here thinking you can do whatever you want. Maybe you should go back to whatever country you came from." Every word, crystal clear, recorded by the body cam Bowen himself had activated. Morales stopped the video. "Explain this to me." Bowen shifted in his seat. "I was responding to a call about suspicious activity." "What call?" "I checked the logs. There was no call about the Cascade Tower that night." Silence. "You fabricated a reason to approach him," Morales said. "Then you escalated the situation. Then you arrested a decorated Navy SEAL for having dinner with his girlfriend." "I didn't know he was—" "That's exactly the problem, Garrett. You didn't know. You saw a black man in a place you decided he didn't belong, and you assumed he was a criminal. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Bowen's face was red. "I've been on this force for 15 years. I know how to do my job. Your job is to protect and serve, not to racially profile citizens based on where they're eating dinner." Morales leaned forward. "You're suspended, effective immediately. Badge and gun. Now." "You can't." "I can and I am. There's going to be an investigation, internal affairs. The FBI is also interested because you violated Viktor Ashford's civil rights under federal law." Bowen stood up. "This is ridiculous. I was just doing—" "Get out of my office." He left his badge and service weapon on her desk and walked out. The investigation took 4 months. Internal Affairs interviewed Viktor twice. They interviewed Simone. They interviewed every diner who'd been in that restaurant. They pulled the building's security footage. They analyzed every second of the body cam recording. The FBI Civil Rights Division opened their own case. Viktor's arrest checked every box for a constitutional violation: unreasonable seizure, false arrest, deprivation of rights under color of law. Viktor cooperated with everything. He provided his statement calmly, precisely, the same way he'd brief a mission. Facts only, no emotion. Let the evidence speak. His commanding officer wrote a letter for the investigation. 12 years of exemplary service, multiple commendations for valor, a man who'd risked his life for his country more times than most people could count. The media got hold of the story 3 weeks in. It went viral. Navy SEAL arrested while having dinner. Officer's body cam captures racial profiling. Decorated war hero humiliated in downtown restaurant. The video clips spread across social media. Millions of views, thousands of comments. People were outraged. The city tried to offer Viktor a quiet settlement, make it go away. He refused. "This isn't about money," he told his attorney. "This is about accountability." 6 months after the arrest, the case went to trial. The prosecution presented the body cam footage, played every word Bowen had said, every assumption, every racist comment. Bowen's defense attorney tried to argue that his client had simply made an error in judgment, that he'd responded to what he believed was a legitimate concern. But there was no legitimate concern, no call, no suspicious activity, just a black man in a suit who Garrett Bowen decided didn't belong. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty. Deprivation of rights under color of law, false imprisonment, civil rights violations. The judge looked at Bowen during sentencing. "You took an oath to protect all citizens. Instead, you used your authority to harass and humiliate a man whose only crime was his skin color. You violated the trust placed in you. You brought shame to your badge. 5 years in federal prison. No early release. No parole for the first 3 years. Bowen's face went white when he heard the sentence. His attorney started to object, but the judge cut him off. The sentence stands. Officer Bowen, you abused your power in the worst possible way. The court hopes this sends a clear message that such behavior will not be tolerated. Viktor sat in the courtroom and watched Bowen being led away in handcuffs, the same handcuffs that had been on his own wrists 6 months ago. He felt no satisfaction, no joy, just a quiet sense that justice had been done. Simone sat beside him, holding his hand. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them. Viktor made a brief statement. I didn't want this to happen to Officer Bowen. I wanted him to be held accountable. There's a difference. What happened to me happens to people every day. Most of them don't have the resources or the platform to fight back. This case isn't just about me. It's about everyone who's been profiled, humiliated, arrested for existing in spaces people don't think they belong. He paused. We can do better. We have to do better.
3 months after the criminal trial ended, the civil case concluded. The city of Seattle agreed to pay Viktor Ashford $2 million in damages. Not $2,000, $2 million. The mayor held a press conference, apologized publicly, promised reforms, new training protocols, body camera policies, accountability measures. Viktor donated half the settlement to organizations that provided legal defense for people who couldn't afford to fight wrongful arrests. The other half went into a fund for veterans dealing with discrimination. Money won't change what happened, he told a reporter, but maybe it can help someone else who goes through the same thing. The Seattle Police Department implemented mandatory bias training. Every officer had to complete it. Bowen's case became part of the curriculum, a warning. This is what happens when you let prejudice guide your actions. Viktor returned to active duty 2 months after the settlement. His SEAL team welcomed him back like he'd never left. They'd followed the case. Every one of them had sent messages of support. He and Simone got engaged that fall. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Some of his SEAL brothers attended in uniform. When people asked him about the arrest now, Viktor's answer was always the same. It taught me that the uniform doesn't protect you from ignorance, but the law does, and truth does. You just have to be willing to stand up for both. He never went back to Altius Restaurant, not because he was afraid, not because he felt like he didn't belong, but because that place would always remind him of being treated as less than human. And he'd spent too much of his life fighting for dignity to voluntarily return to a place that had stolen it from him. The restaurant eventually changed ownership. The new owners reached out to Viktor with an apology and an invitation. He declined politely. Some things you don't need to revisit. Garrett Bowen served 4 years before being released on supervised parole. His law enforcement career was over, his pension revoked. He'd lost everything because he couldn't see past the color of a man's skin. Several officers from that night contacted Viktor privately. Hayes, the younger officer who'd questioned the arrest, apologized, said he should have spoken up more forcefully, should have stopped it. Viktor told him the same thing he told everyone. The system only changes when people inside it refuse to stay silent. You have more power than you think. 2 years after the arrest, Viktor was promoted to Senior Chief Petty Officer. His service record remained spotless. His reputation among his peers was unshakable. He'd faced enemy combatants in 3 countries, survived situations that would break most people. But the hardest battle he ever fought was standing in a restaurant and refusing to let someone strip away his dignity. And he won that battle not with force, but with composure, with knowledge, with the quiet strength that comes from knowing your rights and refusing to surrender them. The body cam footage that Garrett Bowen thought would protect him ended up being the evidence that convicted him. Every word, every assumption, every racist statement preserved in digital clarity. Technology designed to ensure accountability had done exactly that. Victor's story became a teaching moment in police academies across the country, a reminder that the badge doesn't give you the right to treat people as suspects based on appearance, that respect is not optional, that justice, when it works properly, protects everyone. Do you think the 5-year sentence was enough, or should officers who abuse their power face even stricter consequences? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe. We share real stories about justice, courage, and people who refuse to back down when they're in the right. Because sometimes standing up for yourself is the most powerful thing you can do.